Good
Yes,
stuff.
good.
How's everybody doing? My name is Christopher Bartley. I said that so formally. Y'all know who I am, but who I have on the other side of me is Ryan Bell. This gentleman here is an inspiration. I love what he's doing. I'm just going to get right into his bio, read to you briefly who he is, what he's about, and then I'm going to share with you what the What's Your Story platform is all about. Ryan, before I get into it, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man.
Good,
We
good,
were
good.
just talking a little bit beforehand, man. The week
Yeah.
has been good to me. It looks like the weekend's gonna be even better, man. And life is just good right now, man. Life is just good right
And
now. I
I'm
can't complain.
excited. I'm excited for this conversation. And you know what I'm gonna do before I get too deep into this. We
Right,
don't got
right.
producers just yet. I'm gonna go
Yeah,
ahead and hop in on Facebook and reshare this thing from my page. And feel free to do the same thing too, Ryan.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
do that,
Uh,
and
Are we friends on? I don't even know if we friends on Facebook. How, we
we
share
might be. I think we were friends on Facebook before
before
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me go ahead. I'll share it, and then if you hop on mine, you'll see it there. And okay, let me close out Facebook because Facebook takes up a lot of RAM on the desktop. But whew.
Yes.
Okay. So while Ryan is doing that, guys, I want to share with you a little bit about who he is. So Ryan Bell is the founder of Black Father Family. It's an organization dedicated to equipping parents and caregivers with the tools necessary to improve the overall well-being of their children with an intentional focus on the Black father. That's super important. But he's also a dedicated educator, community activist, and Black father advocate with a master's degree in education leadership and extensive postgraduate experience in the area of family and community engagement. And as a veteran speaker, a strategist, cultivator, he has over 10 years of experience delivering impactful lectures, informative workshops, and assisting organizations in their efforts to engage Black men and fathers in social justice. Listen, y'all, he actually had more, but I had to condense it. Like I said, his profile is phenomenal. Ryan, I'm so excited. So before we get into this, I just want to share with our viewers how the What's Your Story platform works. So this is a semi-interview, semi-live coaching. And what we do, ladies and gentlemen, is we take Ryan through his story using the 7-point formula. And so the 7-point story formula, we begin with the backstory. He's going to be talking about his purpose story today, how he got to what he was doing, not necessarily founding the business or founding the organization, but just where he is in life, the season of purpose and giving back and activism and social justice and supporting Black fathers. So we deal with the backstory first, and then we talk about the catalyst. It's typically the call to adventure in the hero's journey, which then moves to a big event. It can either be traumatic or euphoric, but this big event pinches him to make a decision that slingshots us to the midpoint. This is the point of no return. This is like crossing the threshold in the hero's journey. It's where he's intrinsically motivated to go all in the thing and the purpose and whatever it is that he's set out to do, or what was called in the catalyst, what he was called to do by a person or perhaps a situation. So the catalyst is like a moment. The big event might be an aha moment, and the midpoint is like the let's go moment. But then from the midpoint, we get a crisis. Typically, after you get this all in intrinsic motivational hoorah, let's do it, there's opposition. And with this opposition, we're going to discover or, just dig around and try to find out what particular questions perhaps might have Ryan faced in crossing the threshold. What were some of the obstacles, friction, frustration, things that might have just prevented him from moving forward, if any? And everybody's crisis looks different. Crisis doesn't mean that somebody dies, y'all. It's
Right.
different for everybody. And then we hit the climax. The climax is a final showdown. It's typically, especially in purpose stories, it's you versus you. You realize that you were your biggest opposition. So what did you do? What did you come across? What was the mini realization that you realized? You had everything that you needed to actually win. And then the big realization is number 7. It's the last one. It's the denouement. It's the conclusion. It's the acknowledgement. You may not have won the war, but you have a winner's mindset. You may have learned some things along the way. You might have started that business and it might not be making millions, or you have an exit strategy just yet, but it's thriving or it will thrive. So that's what the end is. And then we finish it off with a life application portion at the bottom, where Ryan will take his story and make it more applicable to those of us who say, wow, that's such a great story. I don't know if I'm there. Well, we can pull these principles that'll make it applicable to all of us. So, Ryan, I got you here in the backstory. We are going to start with the who, what, when, where, why, just where you are, and we'll just go there. And as you're doing that, I'll be taking notes. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, if I may, I want to say thank you, man, for the opportunity, and want to send you major props for all of the work that you're doing. I shared this with you before, but the work that you're doing, man, is so important and so vital, because there's nothing like being able to give people a voice. And so, this work that you're doing and giving people, organizations, and companies their voice, man, is very, very important. So much love to you, brother, for giving me this opportunity, man.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. So the backstory you were sharing, I had in my mind kind of, where I wanted to go with the backstory, or start with the backstory, and that's still important to the backstory, but I think I have to go a little bit further, and I'll get to where I originally wanted to start at. Okay. To I believe it was the summer of 2011, I believe it was. And I rarely talk about this. I think this is maybe the first time I've actually shared this live in a public space like this. But I have a good mentor of mine who always says we have to embrace all parts of our story, right? And so when I think about this lane of fatherhood, I was a new father around this particular time, and I found myself in the Richmond City jail, right? I was in the Richmond City jail, and I was there for about a week. I was freshly graduated, and had all this stuff in front of me, right? Everything in front of me that I wanted to see happen with my life, that I wanted to see happen with my child at that particular time. I have children now, but my child at that particular time, right? And what I wanted to see from my family. And I found myself in this jail. But while I was in there, right, I spent about a week in there, and not too many people, I guess, will walk out and say, it was a decent experience. But for me, it wasn't bad, right? It wasn't a bad experience at all. And the reason for that was I ran into some individuals within the jail who pretty much got me together from the standpoint of, hey, you have your degree, right? You're in position, and you're able to do some things that we wish we could go back and do, that we wish we could give to our families in the way in which you're able to give to your family, right? Or at least be in position to do that, right? And it was a couple of gentlemen in there, but one particular gentleman, and one person who I remember the most, and I believe it was at that moment. Now, mind you, I've had my father in my life my entire life, right? He recently passed away, but I had him in my life my entire life. So a lot of what I learned about being a man and being a father and showing up for your family came from him. But during that week that I spent there in that jail, I learned so much about the importance of not taking moments for granted, not taking opportunities for granted, really understanding that this idea, with your family, as a father and with your family, there's a lot that they say, you have people who depend on you, right? In that moment, I was able to really see that even outside of my bloodline and people within my own household, people within my own immediate family, as a Black man, and especially as a Black father, there were people who I've never even met who were depending on me, right? Who were depending on me to do for my family and to do for my children what they couldn't do for theirs, right? And so it just gave me a renewed sense of purpose, right? A renewed sense of, hey, at that moment, I think that's when I realized that there was a bigger calling on my life, I guess, right? In that particular moment,
So I want to dive in here.
Yeah.
So it sounds as if this could perhaps be the catalyst. I'm just ideating. So for those of you that are watching, and Ryan, this is for you as well. There are a myriad of ways to tell the same story, right? What if today we used this, at least this piece right here, being in Richmond City Jail, as the catalyst, where it's not just being in the jail, but the gentleman who talked to you and reminded you not to take these opportunities for granted. What if would that be safe, or is there an actual catalyst after? Because if it is, then we'll keep it this way. But it sounds as if our backstory can be something that includes how you got to Richmond City Jail, and then we use in the actual not prison, but in the actual jail, these gentlemen came and they got me together, and then we can go to the big event. How does that sound? I'm just kind of thinking about how this goes.
So in thinking through it, I potentially, yeah. But
Okay.
So how I got to I guess the space that I'm at now, there was another moment that I guess really pushed me to be in the space I'm in now.
Okay.
That particular moment I shared was kind of like that was the first time that I think anybody put me in position to recognize when that next opportunity came about, to recognize the space that I needed to be in, right? It was always kind of like a foundation. He kind of gave me a different foundation to stand on, right? In that moment, right? So I guess I think it could kind of be like the catalyst to the catalyst, if that makes sense, right?
Okay, because just remember, there is a big event, right? There is something that happens just before you hit your midpoint. So that's what I'm wondering.
So that could be the catalyst then. Yeah. So that could be the catalyst.
So let's do this. Let's put the catalyst here, what we just started out with. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit more of your father, just a little bit. And then we can transition to, even with having this solid, grounded relationship and example within your family, somehow there was something changed, right? Or there's something that just wasn't translated. And I think that just for the purposes of today, that might help to flow this thing. So I'm going to keep it here. So a lot of what you learned about being a man and being a father came from your own father. So so let's talk about that a little bit. And then if there are any details or nuances, if you want to add in there, and I'll just give you an example. So, I still had a rebellious spirit and, whatever it is, that then translated to the moment that landed you Richmond City. And now you have these gentlemen that are like waking you up.
Right. Yeah. So, man, my dad, he was the true definition of quiet strength, right? Or quiet confidence, right? He was, if anybody knows Carlton Bell, he was a man of very few words, right? But absolutely through his actions, continuously showed love for us, for his children. I'm the oldest of three. So love for his children, love for his grandchildren, love for his community. He was an educator, right? Which is kind of the reason why, is the reason why I ended up in the field of education myself. Was a teacher, a principal, and was somebody who was that father of the olden days that took care of the family, right? Provided, protected, made sure that things were in a good position for his family, right? And I could still remember seeing my dad, pouring into the kids over at his school, right? And he was great with building relationships with parents, right? I think that's probably his biggest claim to fame as an administrator, is the ability to take a school that didn't have the greatest parent participation in it, and then within a year you see, PTA is full, parent teacher conference is full, the May Day festivals and the Black History Month programs and all of the parent participation that's going on within the school building is just on 1,000, underneath his leadership. So, my dad was definitely someone who showed me the importance of hard work, right? Showed me the importance of showing up every day, right? Showing up every day to the place and to the people that you've made a commitment to. And this idea of taking your responsibility serious. I'll share this story with you. So when I was in the 7th grade, I was born in California, ended up moving to Virginia. The reason we moved to Virginia, when I was going into the 7th grade, my parents got divorced, right? And so my mom is from Virginia, place in Southwest Virginia called Roanoke, Virginia. That summer, we went on a vacation to Virginia to come see my grandparents, cousins, uncles, family who was in Virginia. We're in summer camp and all of these different things. And it's time for us to go back at least I'm going to go back, right? I wanted to go back to California, right? And lo and behold, I end up graduating high school from Roanoke, Virginia. But that was because my dad said, hey, I'm not going to have two of my kids there and one of my kids with me here. I'm going to uproot my career. I'm going to leave my brothers and sisters. I'm going to leave my family, everybody who's out here in Southern California with me, because the biggest responsibility to me is my children. And so I'm going to now go to Virginia, and I'm now going to start over, and I'm now going to rebuild in Virginia. I'm now going to show them that I take this parenting thing, that I take fatherhood very seriously, right? Okay. And even my mom.
So this is good. This is good. So here's what I'm going to do, because this is really good. And I was just going to put here that your mom is from VA. However, I'm going to do two things. So the first thing that I want to do is we're going to pivot from the qualities of your father. This is strong. This is really strong, which is good. We've got enough. And now, at least for, just for the time frame that we've got, because man, I want to, yeah. We have more time, bro.
That's why I told you this stuff is very important, man. What you doing?
Absolutely.
You might not got no license, clinical license, but it's therapeutic, brother.
So, well, you know what? This is really good, because the way that you're framing your backstory is super important. So we've got enough information or enough background that is going to shift from, well, how is it possible that you would end up in Richmond City Jail? So here's what I'm going to do. So that's the first. I'm going to pivot from your father right quick. But before we do that, the second thing is I want us to talk about just more of the who, what, when, where from your perspective. So let's say obviously the who is you, the where, we have the summer of 2011, but that's for the catalyst. So let's say your where is before that. So we're going to talk about when you were in Southern Cali. So you lived in Southern Cali, like born, right? Born and raised in Southern Cali, kind of born, but kind of raised, and then
born and kind of raised, and then kind of
raised in VA. Gotcha. So lived in Southern Cali, and then moved to Virginia. So that your dad would there's a word, I want to use the word co-parenting, but there's like another would have a more impactful, is it safe to say co-parenting experience? Like, is that
too
technical, but
okay. I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So now that we have that, which I think we might lead out with this here, let's talk about what kind of led you to, I don't even know what just happened. Grammarly, I think, just did something right quick. Hold on for a second. Okay. Yeah, I think I see what happened. Okay. So oldest of three siblings, lived in Southern Cali. We've got the qualities of your pops, which is great. And the fact that you ended up moving. So now let's pivot to how it is that you ended up in, or what led you to Richmond City Jail, like kind of the trajectory there. And then we're going to switch over to Catalyst.
Yeah. So I was always a kid, man. I have people describe me when I used to go to basketball camp, right? As being someone who is very loyal and also very quick tempered, right? Something that I've had to work on in my later years, right? The quick tempered side of things, right? And so, we fast forward throughout high school, and then I get to college, right? And so I'm in college, and I'm actually at this particular point in time, going through college, right? There were various instances that I could point to where I understood that at that particular point in time in my life, right, this idea of alcohol and me being in public spaces, 9 times out of 10 wasn't necessarily the best mixture because I wasn't mature enough to handle those particular instances and situations at that particular time, right? Even with all the love and affection and guidance that my mother and my father had poured into me, right? I wasn't yet at that particular point in my life, right, to be able to handle it in that way. So we fast forward, we get to one particular night. I'm out with some good brothers of mine, right? Some good fraternity brothers of mine, my brothers who I actually came into the fraternity with, and a situation happens, and with some bouncers at the particular club, right? That causes me to get into a physical altercation with one of the bouncers. Right now, in this is where I also learned about perception, which also plays a role into how I work with fathers now, right? Because what landed me in Richmond City Jail was me actually putting my hands on one of the bouncers, right? However, to this day, I still feel it was a justified reason and why I did that, right? However, the perception of the police officers at that particular time, when you don't see what happens inside the establishment, you only see what happened once we got outside the establishment, which was me putting my hands on the bouncer, right? So that's essentially what landed me in Richmond City Jail, right? Was I punched a bouncer in the face. And when I did this in front of Richmond City police, and that particular instance, landed me in the Richmond City Jail for a week, with potential life-changing charges hanging over my head, right?
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna put that on this side here, and then what we're going to do is we are going to just massage the backstory just a little bit more. So you were hitting on the fact that some of your temperaments, right? So very loyal, quick-tempered. There is a gap, just for the sake of this. So there's a gap between that and then even going to school or being in college, being with your frat brothers. Now, you did mention, some level of, alcohol that allowed I guess perhaps maybe exacerbated certain parts of behaviors, and all of that, which okay, we can work with that. But even before that, I'm thinking of what were some of the I don't want to say tangible moments, not specifically as much as give me more of the reason why you kind of had, or maybe just kind of were angry. And you don't have to go into too much detail, right? But let's give us enough so that when we do hit the catalyst, we can see why an altercation would happen. And then we'll move from the backstory and the catalyst to the big event. So what do you got there? And so I just think of like the who, what, when, where, why, how really helps most times. So once again, no, who is you? We got the where. So you're now in Virginia. We've got the when is around college. We'll begin there. Or it could be before that if you're about to share with me something before that. So now the how and the why is kind of where we're at now. So yeah, go ahead and.
I think so. I think to try to answer the question and to pinpoint, I think the win would be, and you challenging me to think deep here, man. I would say the win probably would be not when my parents got divorced, but when I realized I was never moving back to California. And so I think that if in this moment, if I had to pinpoint, I think that would be the win. The win this and by win, what I would say is not necessarily the win of my anger, but the win of trying to reestablish an identity.
That's
right.
good.
Because everything I knew, everything I had known, everything I was wrapped up in California, was wrapped up in Southern California, in Pasadena, in Inglewood, in LA, and these places where me and my family lived and seen me. That it was wrapped up in Southern California, my friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything, the basketball teams I was on and all of these things, right? Everything was wrapped up in that particular area of my life. So I think the win would be when I realized, hey, this is your new reality, right?
Yeah.
This is where you're now going to grow up. This is now where you're going to spend the rest of your life. And I think at that particular point in time is where I had to have a shift in really trying to figure out who I was. Because, you know, we say it all the time, middle school was a rough time period. Them 6th, 7th, 8th grade years,
Yeah.
you know, that's a rough time period for people in general.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was now in the middle of those rough years in a place where I knew, like really knew nobody who was my age, right? You know, all my cousins who were in Virginia, all older, right? My mom's age, right? Maybe just a tad bit older than me, old enough to not be in the same middle school that I'm in at this particular time, right?
Yeah.
And so I now have to enter into this space, enter into this new environment, and I don't know who I am anymore, I guess, or how I show up in these places. And so I think that's really where the lack of or the needing to refine who I was came. And I think that stayed with me all throughout college, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what that's the piece that kind of stayed with me, is me trying to figure out who I was. And I think one tangible thing I could tell how it showed up was me joining my fraternity. I wasn't one of those individuals who came to school and said, I want to be a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, or I'm going to be a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, or I'm going to be a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. Any one of those, right? You know, you have some people who came and they know that's what I'm going to do, right? I came, I didn't know. It wasn't until the first semester of my senior year that I actually joined the fraternity. And that's because I had to go figure out, that was closer towards the end of my college career, where I was beginning to actually really figure out who I was, right? Who I was and what values and ideals that I held true, right? And really beginning to kind of walk through that identity, right? That reshaping or reframing of who I was as a person. So hopefully that got to it. Hopefully that answered.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. So this is where we are now, and this is why this is so important. What I did was I separated a lot of the paternal attributes from your dad from the backstory. It's still important during this conversation to give some more context, but to get to the heart of it, it's almost as if it's secondary. So you have the option of going in depth to create this contrast between who he is and what then ended up in the catalyst, or you can just go straight into, hey, Cali was my life. Parents divorced, and even because of my father's good intentions of moving with that, there was a trade-off.
Yeah.
That's a dichotomy right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Blows my mind. So now we have the catalyst where summer 2011, you're out with frat brothers, situation with the bouncers that ends up in a physical altercation. You're also a new father at the time. And Richmond City Jail for about a week, recent graduate. And then you ran into some gentlemen in the jail who I put here, got you together. They reminded you not to take opportunities for granted, and this gave you a renewed sense of purpose. Now, just for the sake of time, man, I really want to dive into that, but maybe we might have some time after. I want us to look at the big event. What happened after?
It was 2012, actually, when that happened. 2012 when all of that happened.
Got it.
I try to put that, and this is good to bring these things back into your story, because those are moments that I try to put so far out of my mind I forget when these things happen. But
I hear you, man. I hear you. So big event. What happened after Richmond City Jail? Something significant that was just before you have your all in. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to be this advocate?
Yeah. So, man, big event. I took my first job. I want to say my first job was down in York County, Virginia, right? And the reason why I bring this particular place up, I want to contrast it to where I ended up. I took this job in York County, and I saw, I was able to see with York County Public Schools the amount of resources and the amount of intentionality, the amount of focus, effort, energy, and attention that was paid to this idea of incorporating fathers in the lives of their children, right? And more, and even more so within this education space, right? And then I left York County and came back to Richmond, Virginia, where I was going, went to college at, and started working for Richmond Public Schools, and saw a lot of the different challenges that the school district faced in being able to get families, fathers and families, more incorporated into the lives of their children, right? And I was having a conversation with a parent of mine, and in my particular classroom, you know, we had parents coming in and out all the time, right? We were able to do very well with parent engagement, right? And I don't take credit for that. I had some great teachers assistants around me, you know, who had been in the classroom for years, who had built these relationships, right? And it was just a beautiful thing. Shout out to Miss Parham if she gets a chance to see this, right? Love you, Miss Parham. Miss Adams, you know, she's great. Miss Hicks, just great people, right? Who were able to kind of mold and craft and show me the ropes. But I was having a conversation with a parent, and the parent told me, you know, hey, this is the first time anybody, we felt like anybody on a consistent basis has, you know, essentially given a crap about us being involved, right? It's coming from a father, right? Has essentially giving, you know, cared that we come to the school building, that we go on field trip, that we do homework with our kids, that we read to our kids, right? Not to say that this dad was telling me that he wasn't doing these things already, reading to his kids and different things of that nature. He was just acknowledging the fact that it was good that somebody actually cared that somebody was doing these things, right? And so I guess that was my first kind of moment of, hey, it's not that parents and especially fathers don't want to be involved. It's not that these parents over here in this particular place where I was working at, that came from a higher socioeconomic status, wanted to be involved more than the parents over here who came from a lower socioeconomic status. The difference in the two places was the individuals who worked at one place showed that they cared, or showed in a more intentional way that they cared. And then the resources that those places were willing to pour into their families, right? Into their families to get them to show up. And I saw it to be true because when I looked around when I was in Richmond, those people who I just mentioned to you, it may have been their own personal resources, but they were putting those resources in, right? They were putting that time in. They were putting that effort and that attention in. And that was the first real moment I was like, man, you know, I want to do something, you know, that works with parents. I want to do something that works, you know, more specifically with fathers. You know, what does that look like from the standpoint of just getting them involved and getting them engaged, right? What is that?
So
quick question. I really didn't know.
Quick question for you. Was it this parent that reached out to you? Did he say this was the first time that he experienced a father giving so much attention and intentionality into being involved with the school? Like, or because I might have missed that, or was it more so you working there as was it as a teacher, as an admin at the time?
So I was a teacher at the time, and so he was saying more so it was the first time that anybody's acknowledged his effort as a dad.
Acknowledgement. Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
So this was the first time that anybody said, "Hey, man, you know, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
right? Keep showing up, keep reading. Homework is improving. Keep practicing. You know, hey, we got a field trip. Keep showing up to them, right? You know, it was the first time that anybody which speaks to this idea is a whole nother conversation about why we need more male teachers, Black male teachers in these classrooms, because we the ones who could go in and talk and walk and think the way that other men are thinking to get the message to them, like, hey, no, we want you over here. It's important. We need you over here, and keep doing what you're doing, right? Keep when we got to celebrate. For all the time we tell people that, we don't want to celebrate you for doing what you're supposed to do, right? But guess what? Even though you're doing something you're supposed to do, it's a lot of people who don't do what they're supposed to do. So yes, we need to still be able to offer those moments. So it was more so the gentleman was saying to me, hey, look, I appreciate you for showing me that you appreciate me.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I like that. And I'm just going to make a note there. So it's just this reality of celebration and encouraging fathers to continue being involved. And then we move to the midpoint.
Mm-hmm.
He comes, he says, wow, thank you for acknowledging me. What happens? So we're in the middle here. It's almost 12:10. Man, time is flying.
Yes,
and the hardest part just might be the crisis. So I want us to get some time so that we can flesh that out. What was your midpoint, the point of no return where you said, okay, I'm going to focus or be an advocate, or what was that?
Yeah. So to try to frame, so I think the midpoint for me is probably the longest time of my story, right? So to try to put it as succinctly as I possibly can. So I end up shortly after that conversation I had with that dad, I ended up leaving Richmond Public Schools, right, and moving back home to Roanoke, Virginia, and I started working for the health department around a father and family program, right? And you said the midpoint, that's the point of no return, right?
Yeah, this is where you're like, I'm all in being an advocate, or doing what you're doing now because of the organizations and things that you've started. So
got you. Okay. So I moved back to Roanoke, Virginia. Sorry, and I'm working for the health department, and the health department's program is called the Virginia and Family Fatherhood Initiative, right? And it's strictly focused on working with teen and young adult parents, mothers and fathers, around helping to improve the quality of life for them, their families, and their children, right? And so it was at that point in time that I got to see kind of what that this works specifically, because mind you, when I'm in education, I'm working with families, but the focus is around, still I'm a teacher every day, right? So I'm working with the children. This was the first time I got to see that there was an opportunity there and what it could look like to work specifically with the adults, to work specifically with the parents, right? So I do that for about a year. So federally funded program, the grant money goes away. I end up transitioning back into the school system at Roanoke City Public Schools, where I get into this space. I'm now no longer in the classroom. I'm moving to this space of family and community engagement, an admin position, right? And it was in that role that I got the opportunity to see, hey, look, what it could look like, or what the challenges were from an administration standpoint on having parents and families and fathers involved in the educational lives of their children, right? And through the health department and through the school system, I got to see that this existed not only in the education space, but in the social services space, in the family court space, in all of these different spaces. I got to see where these challenges and these issues existed, right? Then I leave Roanoke City and I end up going to back to Richmond Public Schools, right? And this is where kind of my point of no return comes, right? I'm working for Richmond Public Schools in the area of family and community engagement, and I was let go from my job, right? I was let go from my job, and for reasons that could still be considered controversial, to say the least, right? And what I mean by that is the reasons in which I was let go aren't necessarily reasons that may be presented in the best way in today's climate, right? Racially speaking, right? But again, that's a story for another day, right? But it was in that moment of being let go where I had to sit down with myself and ask this question: was I in the right space to begin with? Right? It was in that moment that I really took the opportunity to say, hey, look, you know what it is you want to do. You've seen what it is that the need around what you want to do, that is actually needed, and it's a space for you to be in, right? And here's the perfect opportunity for you to walk in that purpose, right?
Let's do this. Oh, this is good. So I'm going to stop you because I think that this is going to be your crisis.
Gotcha.
The fact that you leave Richmond Public School the first time, transition now into an admin position, working in the health department. You're now seeing this opportunity to work specifically with parents. And maybe if we spent more time, we might have to massage it just a little bit more. But it seems as if your midpoint here is you're no longer a teacher. You're specifically even when you go back to Richmond Public Schools, you're not going back as a teacher. You're going back as an admin. So your midpoint or your point of no return was you transitioned from just being an educator to someone who is focusing now directly with the parents, with community engagement. So your admin transition, at least in this arc that we're doing, is your point of no return. You've changed your role and you changed your mindset, not just working with the kids, but working with the adults. That's a major. And then with that, though, we then hit the crisis because you return back to your original stomping grounds as an admin, no longer a teacher, but then you get fired. Crisis. And here's what we're going to do. Man, because we got to massage the crisis just a little bit more. But the climax is when you start asking yourself, was I even in the right space to begin with? Not necessarily your focus, because the focus is already starting to take shape in the midpoint, but in the actual role, career-wise. So let's do this. Let's hit the crisis. You transition back to Richmond Public Schools for family and community engagement, and then you get let go from your job. So now let's deal with certain questions now. What was going on in your mind? Not in the climax question, was I in the right space, but more so when it actually happened, when you got fired. What questions did you ask yourself about what you believed you were at this point really called to do as a professional and as a person? What did that pink slip do?
So the first question I asked myself was, can they coexist? Right? Can how I show up and how I advocate and how I speak out and how I position myself to be an advocate for parents and specifically fathers, the ways in which I do that, can they show up, right? And there's a quote by Audre Lorde, and I probably won't get it exactly right, but I share it anyway, where she says, the master's tools won't be, the master's tools will never be used to destroy the master's house, something along those lines, right? Gotcha. And the reason why I shared that is because I was kind of battling with myself in that moment of, one, Ryan, what did you do wrong, right? Did you do anything wrong? And then once I kind of got myself past that, it was really this conversation of what they say they want you to do. This is how it looks when it happens authentically. This is how it looks when it happens genuinely. This is how it looks when it happens in a way that is going to actually push the envelope and move the needle for fathers, move the needle for families, move the needle for students. And not always within these systems are those two things going to see eye to eye.
Good. So here's crisis question number one then. What did I do wrong? Because when I generally advocate, will I always lose my job or assignment? How can I show up and advocate for fathers? Does that really, can I show, I think I messed this up here. Can how I show up and advocate for fathers really exist? So this is where it's coming from, how you approach the advocacy and then the actual advocacy that needs to happen. And that might be crisis question number one. Would that be kind of accurate? Because it seems as if when you are actually showing up, you get shut down.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to put that as the first one. Any other crisis questions? Because this is a huge one, because showing up and then getting shut down, what that does is it can create a sense of fear or tension in realizing, how can I really be there for this person if I know that I'm going to be removed from the equation when I really do what I know I'm supposed to be doing for that individual?
Yeah. And the crisis question number 2 that I think is the next space I went to is, in order to feed my family, do I now let go of advocating for other families in the ways in which I do them, right? And how I did them in crisis question number 1, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know, do I now have to shift again? Still talking about this identity thing, right?
yeah.
Do I now have? I'm finally coming into who I think I am, and how I, well, at this point in time, who I know I am, and how I show up.
Yeah.
You know, how do I have to give that up now, right? Because I'm answering the question in the first one of, can they coexist?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I realize whether they can or they cannot coexist,
Mm-hmm.
do I have to give that up?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay. So now climax is when we actually answer these questions. So we're gonna do a speed speed drive by just to get this. But you asked the question, was I in the right space to begin with? That's a really great question. So let's answer that question.
Yes.
And then let's see if we can address crisis 1 and crisis 2. So you ask yourself the question, was I in the right space to begin with? What did you do to answer that question?
So was I in the right space to begin with? I had to now begin to do some soul searching around some different experiences that I had along this particular journey, right? So to answer that question in a drive-by fast way, I would say yes and no. Yes, the space of education. Yes, working within these systems is the right space to be in. No, from the standpoint of the particular educational system I was in, the particular department I was in was not the right space to be in, right? And that's due to various different reasons, right? Leadership, atmosphere, different things of that nature, right? So yes, generally speaking, yes, we need to be in these spaces. We need to have people who are on both sides, advocating from the outside and pushing the envelope from within, right? So yes, I was in the right spaces. However, no, it wasn't necessarily the right space for them to be ready to receive it. I say it like that.
Okay. So that's not necessarily because I was going to put here no as far as your role. Is that correct, or is it really no as far as what you're saying? The
roles are needed. The
right.
particular role I was operating within, that role is absolutely needed.
Right.
The particular individuals like myself who are willing to push that envelope are absolutely needed. You need those individuals in those roles, within those systems, to push those envelopes. So yes, I was in the right space. No, from the standpoint of the particular, maybe that particular district, that particular organization, the particular people who are over that department, right? Those individuals who may not be ready to hear that message in that way, see that message in that way, receive that message in that way, right? No, from that standpoint, because the reality of the matter is when you're in these spaces, you're going to have individuals who, for lack of a better term, kind of control your fate with that respective organization, right? So yes, I was absolutely the right person in the right role. But no, I don't necessarily believe I was in a space and place that was ready to move in that particular direction.
Okay, good. Okay, this is good. Now, crisis question. So showing up and then getting shut down. What did I do wrong? Can these two coexist? Obviously, the answer is yes. You, though, had to, and you answered in the no. So the answer is yes, they can coexist, but the culture will determine its success. I'm just throwing it out there just for now, just for the sake.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. They can coexist. The culture, the people, they're going to determine though whether or not it can coexist. It can. I've seen it happen. I've seen beautiful places where it's working, but
Yeah.
people are embracing that, right? But again, it's the people who kind of shape the culture and the atmosphere in those places.
That's good. Now, question number 2, crisis question. In order to feed your family, do you now let go of advocating for other families? How did you answer that one?
So this one took some soul searching again.
Yeah.
Sitting down with my woman, right, and really having some conversations, right. Her helping me really kind of for anybody who out there who's spiritual, right, in my spiritual journey. And so the answer I got to was no. You never give up your calling. You never give up your purpose. Now, what you may have to do, which is where the Bell Effect comes in, right, which is where my nonprofit organization like Black Father Family comes in, right. You may have to now go create that space, right? You may have to now go and develop that space for yourself, right? And then now you have to go and begin to align yourself with those individuals who you have encountered along your journey, along your story. You have to now go back and align yourself with those individuals who feel the way you feel, think the way you think, are moving in the direction that you're moving in, who are willing to stand with and for you in these moments, right? So I answered it by saying no. I do not have to give that up in order to feed my family.
Okay.
I just have to figure out how I can now position myself to where both of those things can happen, right?
That's
to where
so
I can
good.
still be this advocate,
Yeah.
and to where I can still feed my family while being this advocate.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Realization. We are now at the and so this is where let's talk about, now that you've had that moment, that clarity, obviously, and you just mentioned it. Give me your first. Which one came first? Was it the Bell Effect, or which one was kind of how you were able to fully answer the question in its reality? Which organization?
So the Bell Effect. The Bell Effect. Black Father Family came first, but that was still me. That was still me being in a position to where I was kind of doing some hard work, and not necessarily, and it still wasn't in a position for me to be able to feed my family, right?
Gotcha.
And I still was kind of at the place of how far do I go with this thing, right?
Okay. So did Black Father Family happen during the crisis? I just want to make sure that I'm not saying that you established it after answering these crisis questions, or did it happen?
So Black Father Family happened around the midpoint time in my life, right? Around the midpoint time of my life.
Okay.
But it was the great foundation, because within that I was able to see and meet many of these fathers.
I'm going to put this here. That's important though. So you also established Black Father Family nonprofit, right? 501c3 or
yes,
just
yep.
Okay. And to
and that organization at that particular point in time, at this it shifted now, so kind of what I shared with you earlier, but at that particular point in time, it was simply just to encourage Black fatherhood, right? Expose Black fatherhood to the world. That's essentially what the mission was at that particular point in time when I established it.
Gotcha. I would say to the world. When you say to the world, what do you mean? Exposing them to the world.
So in that midpoint time when I was working for the health department, there was a lot of negative stereotypes about Black fatherhood, right? And so I wanted to be, from the Black fathers don't show up, that Black fathers aren't present.
Oh, from the other side, like you wanted the world to see that Black fatherhood exists. Okay, gotcha.
I was that wasn't my reality, right? I felt that I was a good dad. My dad was a good dad. My brother's a good dad. I got frat brothers, good fathers, uncles, cousins. That wasn't my reality of the Black men who were fathers, right?
Good. So now I'm going to switch over to here, where you're to answer these questions. Like, no, I don't have to give up my calling and my purpose, and and in order to take care of my family, you establish the Bell Effect.
Right.
Okay. Cool. So establish the Bell Effect, which, and then we're just gonna, you can give us a quick summation of what the Bell Effect now does in the context of how it's helped you to come over those crises.
So the Bell Effect works with these institutions, right? It works with the school systems. It works with the Department of Social Services. It works with the juvenile and domestic relations court, right? It works with these particular court service units who may be dealing with fathers, younger fathers, right? It works with these particular institutions to begin to create an atmosphere where the work of building up fathers, the work of engaging fathers, the work of putting fathers in a position to where they can increase their capacity to parent in purpose, right? It puts them, it works with the institutions that work with the fathers, with the practitioners that work with the fathers, right? That's what the Bell Effect does, right? How do we get these fathers into the buildings? How do we now, when we get them into the buildings, right? How do we now provide an experience for them that allows them to show up in their most authentic way, right?
Okay.
And by that, we're able to produce greater social outcomes, greater societal outcomes, greater organizational outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Because the secret sauce in a lot of this, especially for my people in education, the secret sauce is the daddy. That's the secret sauce.
The secret sauce. Hey, listen. This is what we're gonna do for the first life application. I'm gonna put in a secret sauce. The daddy. So and this may not be it, because I definitely don't want this to seem trite, especially this part of our process where now what you're going to do is take 5 life applications. So maybe the secret, I just like what you said there, but maybe that's not it. But here's what we're going to do. So we've got your entire story mapped out. Well, a version of your purpose story. And now I want you to pull 5 life applications, 5 lessons, 5 call to actions. So you're going to particularly, and this is how I'm cutting the secret sauce is the daddy's not going to work, even though I love what you said there. Because
it'll work for something else.
It'll work. Yeah.
Work for something else.
Absolutely. So you're going to use a verb in order to flesh out these 5 applications. So go or do or start or stop or think, right. Or okay. So hit us with it. Number one. Based on your, so remember, this is now based on your story, not advocacy, but your purpose journey. Okay.
Yes. Cool. I would say number 1 would be pause. Pause to truly identify who you are. Right. And that may not necessarily that's always going to be a rhythm journey, right? You may change and you may shift, but throughout every shift, throughout every change, throughout every stage of your life, you have to pause, right? Nice. Pause and kind of figure out who you are. Number two, I would say after you pause, then clarify what it is you want, right? And for me, that came in that, I guess, in that midpoint time frame of, right, what is it that I want, right? Mm-hmm. And then after you pause, after you clarify what it is you want, then I would say surround, right? One thing that I and my father, and there's a bunch of other people I can mention, I surrounded myself with great positive role models, right? A good mentor of mine, Anthony Mingo, he calls it the picture on the box, right? Who you can look at, right? Surround yourself with the people who are doing those things. So once you pause, once you clarify, once you begin to surround yourself, then act, right? Act on those things, right? Act on that. Once you pause and identify who you are, once you gain clarity around what it is you wanted, once you surrounded yourself with the good people who are moving in that direction, who hopefully are providing you with some advice and wisdom, act on that. Don't sit on that information. Don't sit on that journey. Don't sit with that. Act on that. Give that away to the world, right? Begin to put that out there in the world. And then lastly, I would say reflect. Sit back and reflect on all of these 4 steps in front of it, right? And then begin to repeat that process over and over again, right? And so I think that from my life's journey, or from this piece of my life journey, that's what I would take away as 5 life applications.
Ryan, this was rich. This was really good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through your entire story arc here and then read your life applications. And if there's anything that's not accurate, go ahead. I won't be able to see you while I'm doing this. So just give me a verbal cue and say, hold on, it was this time, or it was really this. But if it's a major inaccurate depiction or account, Just let me know and we'll fix it right on the spot here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ryan's a version of Ryan's purpose story. So Ryan is the oldest of three siblings. And early on, his parents got divorced, but he eventually realized that he was never moving back to California. Why? Because he moved to Virginia. This is where his mom was now at the time, so that his dad could have a more impactful co-parenting experience. It's crazy how you can have good intentions, but with that, there is also a negative trade-off. And this is what's happening now with Ryan. And so his entire youth was in Cali. And so now that changes. He didn't know anyone in Virginia. And even if he did, which was his family, there's this age gap. And so now he has to enter into this new environment, rediscover his identity, and his journey, or this journey, happened from about middle school to his college years. And a lot of what he learned about being a man, however, and a father, came from his own father. But there's some quirks. There were some parts of him that eventually lends into our catalyst, because he was loyal, but he's also quick-tempered. And this is while he was still learning to reshape his identity. So in the summer of 2012, he was out with his frat brothers one night, and a situation with the bouncers happens, and this ends up in a physical altercation. So while he's a new father and while he's a recent graduate, he now ends up in Richmond City Jail for just about a week. But during that time, he ran into individuals in the jail who actually got him together. In other words, they reminded him not to take these opportunities for granted. They learned that he was a recent graduate. They learned that he was a new father. And so what this did was it gave Ryan a renewed sense of purpose. So Ryan's out. Ryan's living life. Ryan's progressing. And he took his first job in York County, Virginia, and saw the amount of resources and intentionality and attention that's paid to the idea of incorporating fathers in the lives of their children. Then he leaves York County and started working for Richmond Public Schools as a teacher. And he also then begins to experience these challenges in actually getting fathers involved in their children's lives, particularly the academic journey. And so there's this one moment, though, he's a teacher at this time. There's this one moment that a father says to Ryan, this is the first time anybody's acknowledged their efforts, my efforts as an actual dad, giving so much effort and attention to being involved in school. And so with this affirmation that this father receives, it really just highlights the reality of celebration and encouraging fathers to continue being involved. So Ryan takes that and he transitions from being a teacher to an administrator. He leaves Richmond Public Schools to go back to Roanoke, Virginia, and now he's working for the health department, particularly or specifically the Virginia and Family, I might have missed a word there, but the Virginia and Family Fatherhood Initiative.
That's it.
So, okay, great. So the first time he's now seeing this opportunity to work specifically with parents, not just encouraging them and telling them keep going, but actually providing resources, actually being there to advocate for them. Now, from this experience, he transitions back to Roanoke City Public Schools as an admin for family and community engagement. And during this time, he is now establishing the Black Father Family 501c3 to support his direction in father advocacy. This is his point of no return, ladies and gentlemen. He's no longer just a teacher. He's no longer just an advocate. He is now going to be a founder to create this space to encourage Black fathers and expose the world to what successful Black fathers look like, because they do exist. However, there's a crisis, because now as he's transitioning from teacher to administrator, wanting to directly impact fathers and fatherhood, he transitions to Richmond Public Schools as an admin for family and community engagement. So still in that space, but then he gets let go from the job. Here's crisis question number one. Does showing up and then getting shut down, what does he do wrong? Like, what did he do wrong? When he genuinely advocates being his true self, will he always lose his job or assignment? That's the crisis. Can he show up with his personality, his style, his approach, and successfully advocate for fathers? Can that really coexist? Crisis question number two. In order to feed his family, does he now have to let go of advocating for other families? Does he have to choose between his calling and his own community, his own family? Well, he asks the question, well, was I in the right space to begin with? So he asks this question because he begins doing some soul searching and reflecting on previous experiences in education and advocacy. And the question is yes and no. Yes, in general, as far as purpose and his professional role, he is in the right space, but no, as far as the specific context and culture of people who aren't ready to receive what authentic advocacy looks like. And so he answers the question, the crisis question, not just his reflection, but the crisis question is, yes, they can coexist. He can do the way that he advocates and still be a successful advocate, but the culture will determine how successful or how far that goes. In crisis question number 2, his answer is no, he doesn't have to give up his calling and purpose. However, he has to create a space for him to take care of his family and at the same time, the purpose and assignment of advocating for fathers. How does he do this? Well, Ryan has established the Bell Effect. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He has 2 organizations, and he shared with me a little bit about what the Bell Effect is doing, and it is amazing work. There's some stuff down in the pipeline. I'm not going to tell y'all. He's going to tell y'all because he's going to make the announcement eventually. Man, he's making an impact. And what the Bell Effect does is it works now with the school systems. We talked about creating this space. So now he's not just directly connecting with the fathers, but he's on the other side too, working with the school systems, Department of Social Services, juvenile and domestic relations courts to create an atmosphere where the building and engaging and positioning of fathers can increase their capacity to parent in purpose. So life applications, you may be saying to yourself, well, that's Ryan's story. That's great, but I'm never going to be an administrator. I don't think that that's my calling or my purpose. Well, it doesn't have to be, because these applications are universal and everyone can apply these to their own journeys. Number 1, pause to truly identify who you are. Number 2, clarify what it is you want in life. Number 3, surround yourself with great positive role models. Number 4, act on the things you set out to do. And number 5, rinse, wash, and repeat by reflecting on what you've done. And repeat the process. Ryan, that is your purpose story.
Thank you, my brother. You're good at what you do, because the fact that you can remember all that offhand, just a quick.
I was reading it.
The fact that you're able to read it with that much clarity as you're going through it, man, that's awesome, man. This has been great, brother. This has been great, man.
I appreciate your time. You have such an inspirational story. Stand for a little bit. We're going to get off. But for those of you that are either just chiming in, you missed it. So go ahead, scroll back, look at it from the beginning. This is an inspirational purpose story with Ryan Bell. He is the founder of the Bell Effect and Black Father Family. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Black Father's Family. And at the same time, you can see him, or you can visit his website, thebelleffect.org. Okay, so thebelleffect.org. You don't want to miss what this young man is doing. This gentleman is on a path of advocacy for Black fathers that I have not only been exposed to, but exciting to see where his journey takes him. So you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you on the next What's Your Story?